let's go into another call that they made or didn't make. I think this one's a little more cut and dry with the Aidan Hutchinson, getting in there late. I think that was obviously him getting in there late, maybe a little bit of a Academy Award winning performance by Mahomes by accentuating it, because I really believe that Aidan Hutchinson could have destroyed him a heck of a lot more than he did on that play. I don't know. What do you feel about that call?
Yeah, look, man, it's just one of those things where the time it took, taking one or two steps to hit the quarterback, it's unfortunate. You can't do it. Quarterbacks are protected. You're on the road. It's Patrick Mahomes. He knows every single way to get the call. It was just one of those weird games where you just go, man, you had to fight. You had to fight the officials. You had the Kelsey. I wish the Lions would have reviewed that catch, and it would have been ruled it not a completion. And then you recognize that, look, it's frustrating. You're on the road. You're not getting the benefit of the doubt with the calls. And Aidan Hutchinson, it's super tough to do, but you can't take two steps and put your hands on the quarterback ever. Mahomes is going to do the theatrics. You know that the officials are, it had to feel like, right, the Chiefs are not going to go to 2-4. But I just was shocked that throughout the course of a 60-minute game, they didn't find one holding call against the Chiefs for the Lions' favor. They didn't find anything. There was, I think, a call that the Lions had to decline late in the game. But overall, look, the refs weren't the reason the Lions lost, but they surely didn't help. They didn't make the night any easier for the Detroit Lions, and it's unfortunate. But in my opinion, I realize that the Detroit Lions, when they go out and play, if they make some mistakes, Amon-Ra's drop was an issue, too many penalties, and then in the end too, it's just, you have to give the Chiefs credit. They realized where our weakness was. They understood that if the Lions secondary was going to be beat up, they were going to play a lot more zone. And boy, did Andy Reid find all the ways to pick it apart, taking advantage of some of the linebackers not being all that speedy. And you realize that you just were not able to make the tackles and consistently play defense to get a stop. It's tough. It's a bad game. But look, it's a loss that you can learn from. And I definitely believe the linebackers will get better from this. I believe that Kelvin Shepard will also get better by being schooled by Andy Reid. And it's okay. You're 4-2, and you're coming back home in a position where you're playing a Bucs team that's also kind of injured. And I think, too, the Detroit Lions are going to learn, too, that, hey, you knew you needed to run the football against the Chiefs. They were able to early in the game, but the Chiefs clamped down. There's lessons to be learned from that so that you can go up against the Bucs and pound the rock. Gibbs has got to be better, Montgomery, and I do think all around everything he's got to be better. When they lose, it's really a collapse. I thought John Morton didn't call his best game, and I just think that, look, it's no shame to lose to one of the top coaches, top defensive coordinators, top quarterback. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, I wasn't mad. I was obviously frustrated that the officials were doing their thing, but in the end, it's one of one with Mahomes and his style, one of one with Andy Reid, and Steve Spagnuolo is widely respected as an amazing defensive coordinator. So it was going to be and also to the desperation that the Chiefs had. They didn't want to go to 2-4. So it made it for a rough night for the Detroit Lions, but I think they'll rebound, and having that extra day, to game plan and get ready on Monday night, it's going to be a zoo in Ford Field. So I'm pretty confident the Lions are going to get to 5-2.
I love that confidence. And there's so many different temperatures of how you can feel after a loss. If you got guys that are just running, rampant in the wrong direction and it just looks awful out there, you got to call that out. But when you just got kind of a game that, this was just a grindy game. And I think it was a little bit closer than what the score had shown. And it really just came down to who was in there on them big plays. The Chiefs, they were successful on their fourth down tries, and the Lions were not successful on their fourth down drives. And really, if you just go and get a couple of those fourth downs, like the Amon-Ra catch, very uncharacteristic drop at that point in time, and you get a couple of those, and the trajectory of the game could have completely changed from that point. You just got to be in those big moments.
And you look at it from the perspective of going into that contest, you realize that your secondary was depleted. And also, too, you guys you have players out there playing, but they're not 100%. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are dealing with things. They're doing probably God knows what to try to get out on the field. So they're not 100%. And so you're depleted. And it was just unfortunate that they couldn't get the stops when it was needed. And look, Patrick Mahomes found all the open lanes. And look, the linebackers, they just made a lot of mistakes. First and foremost, you start with, okay, you have the next man up mentality, right? Amik Robertson, you can't get blocked off your route. You gotta handle the business there. You can't get, pick I know that they run great pick plays, but that's not you got to stick with it. You got to fight through that. You can't just let the guy get wide open and get a touchdown. And for the Lions, it just was one of those deals when they lose, they don't end up in the end zone at the rate in which they do. So, it was just, I think too, that they could have involved maybe David Montgomery a little bit more in the contest. I feel like he had a good game, but Jahmyr Gibbs, I feel like early in the game was getting it going, but then throughout the game, I feel like he was the target of the Chiefs defense and they tried to limit him. And I feel like David Montgomery could have maybe even done a little bit more, utilized more. And it stunk too, because here's the thing too. Now, within the context, you said it when we first started talking, despite all of that, the Lions were, I think, only down 3 early in the fourth quarter. They get that touchdown, and they're only down 3. Now they need to stop. They need to stop, and that's when the Hutchinson play happened. That's when the drive where Hollywood Brown got the second touchdown to extend that lead. And so you just needed one stop in the fourth quarter. You weren't able to get it because of mistakes and a lot of I think the one thing that you'll see on film when you watch it, a lot of uncharacteristic missed tackles. I was surprised at the ability of the Chiefs to evade our tacklers. It just wasn't the best performance. And like I said, you still were in the game up until the early part of that fourth quarter. And unfortunately, Mahomes gets that scoring drive to it gets that penalty, the advantage with the Hutchinson, and then you take advantage in a touchdown to Hollywood Brown, and the game was basically out of reach. So you're right there. And that's the fine line between winning and losing, is in those certain critical moments. The Lions, this game, didn't step up, and the Chiefs did. And that goes to desperation, talent, and the understanding, too, that you also got to remember, in the NFL, information is power. Steve Spagnuolo knew every single facet of what Calvin Shepard thinks. That's the mentor. The mentor knows. Like, the reports were there that, Spagnuolo has always wanted to work with Calvin Shepard, and there's opportunities that they could have, but Shepard did not take those advantages. And so you don't think that in those meetings, Spagnuolo and Andy Reid realized exactly what the Lions were going to do? There were no real special things that the Lions could do to make it all that different. And so the Chiefs had the advantage, in my opinion. And in that realm, it's okay, as long as you learn how to play zone a little bit better, get in your assignments a little bit better, communicate better. As long as you make those improvements, then I think that they're going to take out all their frustrations on the Bucs, and it's going to be a long night for Tampa.